getting warm.
Mm.
It hasn't a damn thing to do with SUVs and cow flatulence.
And now we could also, I guess, at this point here, tie this in, and this is where the background, so to speak, of what we have been talking about a little bit about the global conspirators, or the emerging plan, I guess, of the conspirators, what they're going to use in order to implement a global government, and they're using the pretext here, so to speak, of environmental issues to set the stage, so to speak, so people would willingly go along with this. But we can connect this at this point, I guess, also with your books in regards to that we actually might be now then in a time where they actually have the technology to manipulate the weather and actually make it seem like it's more worse than it actually is, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I cover this a little bit in Weather Warfare. I decided with writing Weather Warfare, it's 400 pages of what I can prove. So what I did is I went around all the conspiracy theories that I could find. I rounded up every conspiracy theory about, Katrina was a hit, the Asian tsunami was man-made, all these theories, and then did an analysis of what can be proven about those theories. And And what can be proven is, and I'm taking this from their sources. One of the things that I discovered that kind of blew me away is once it sank in, what I had discovered is that there is an open scientific and military literature that the average Joe has no clue exists, but it's out there and it's in plain sight.
Mm.
The way research is done is somebody cuts a check for grants. They give grant money. Well, periodically you have to convince the guy cutting the checks that you're doing good work.
Right.
And the standard way of doing that is you publish your findings. You publish your studies. So what happens is a guy gets a grant, he does a study, and then publishes what he found in the study to get another grant to do another study, and this is how it's done.
Right.
Well, you don't publish in the LA Times. There are literally thousands of small circulation academic, scientific, and military publications that exist for these publications.
Yeah.
So what happens is you get your study, you send it to the Journal of Applied Meteorology, and they then give it to a review panel of your peers. The peer review panel says, "Yeah, this sounds like pretty good work. Yeah, this is standard scientific procedure. This might actually produce some decent results down the road somewhere." So then your study gets published in the Journal of Applied Meteorology, which has it comes out 6 times a year, and they print 2,000 copies, and it goes to some universities, some libraries. A couple of meteorologists who subscribe to the thing. 2,000 copies are printed, and 180 are read, and it goes nowhere, and it disappears.
Right.
Well, as long as you don't actually find anything the military can use, you just keep on publishing, getting your grant money, publishing, getting your grant money. At some point, if you actually find something that the military can use, you vanish. You stop publishing in the open literature. So you can follow a trail of research. You can follow these guys are working on this stuff, and they're coming up with these ideas, and they're moving over here, and they're looking at this stuff, and then it's dark from there on.
It's silent, you mean?
Yeah. Oh dear, they got it to work.
I see what you mean. So they're experimenting. They're using, so to speak, also people within the private sector and experimentation, things like this. But when it becomes enough, of interest for the potential application within the military use, they are picked up. Is that what you're saying here? Exactly.
Once they actually get something workable, once they get something workable, it disappears from the open literature, because if it becomes workable, usable by industry, of course, doesn't wants sole ownership of it. They don't want the patent being used by their competitors.
Sure.
So they keep it secret. And if it's something the military can use, well, of course, it gets slapped under national security and hidden away secret that way.
Yeah.
So as long as the researcher doesn't find anything of any use, it's out there in the open scientific literature.
Right.
So which means that you can research this stuff. You can find what trails, what lines of research are currently in progress, and you can go back over the last almost 100 years. These things started being published in the 1920s. They really ramped up after World War II. Today there are tens of thousands of these small circulation publications, and many of them are available on the internet. Many of them, for an article on a study, will have what is called an abstract, and the abstract is a couple of paragraphs of what the study was about, who did it, where it was published, yada yada. And that's available on the internet right now.
Okay.
So you can follow down, if you figure out the right search terms, Google will open a world to you that you have no clue is there prior to discovering it.
I see what you mean, and that's very interesting. And I guess also that what you're alluding to here is that this is a trail that you actually picked up on then in regards to weather manipulation, right?
Exactly. The bibliography of weather warfare is 31 pages. Now, I have the books in it, in the bibliography, on my website as recommended reading. But I decided not to put the publications on, so that to give somebody some reason to buy the book for. And the publications have just amazing things. I'm looking at this. Some of these things are pretty well established, like Scientific American, and then others are from crazy things that nobody's ever heard of, like War and Peace Digest. And of course, there are the average Joe knows about a few of these, because if he watches the 6 o'clock news, occasionally he sees people like Dr. Dean O'Dell say, in the most recent issue, or in next week's issue of JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, there is a publication of a study that shows promise to have an effect on disease X. So most Americans, I've heard about JAMA, Lancet, Science, Nature, and they don't realize that those are just the creme de la creme. Those are just the ones that everybody wants to get into, but
right.
to be really good to get published in them.
Right.
But then there are all these other little ones with, usually 3-4 names in the title. The only one I can ever remember offhand is the Journal of Applied Meteorology, because I picked up half a dozen articles out of it because it's pretty cool.
Right.
They really were working on it. Applied meteorology is mostly about how to read the charts and tell and do a stand-up in front of a green screen and tell the audience what the charts mean. Yeah. But some of it actually is how to affect the stuff that appears on the charts, how to actually move cloud masses around, how to do what is called weather management. And right now, weather management is a huge, multi-billion-dollar industry. You may have heard that China is promising perfect weather for the Summer Olympics. How can they do that? How can they promise perfect weather? Well, they have an army of 37,000 people working full-time on weather management.
Really?
And they are using 50 years worth of research in China on how to increase precipitation, decrease precipitation, prevent hail. And oddly enough, the way they're promising, the Summer Olympics in China occur during the rainy season.
Really? No.
Absolutely insane putting it there.
Okay, yeah.
And so the Chinese actually talked the International Organizing Committee for the Olympics to put back the start of the Summer Olympics as late as possible to get most of the rain out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're using a technique they learned from the Russians. is the Russians have this little problem. They have their big parade every year is the May Day parade.
Right, right.
It rains in Russia on May Day.
Mm-hmm.
But the Russians figured out how to prevent it from raining on the May Day parade.
They blew it.
And that technique, that technology is what the Chinese are planning to use for at least opening day of the Summer Olympics.
Really? What I've heard, the Russians actually did some kind of explosion to actually disperse clouds. Is this what you're talking about here?
Right, but as I understand it, what they do is they do cloud seeding, and they cloud seed with a substance. Now, normally cloud seeding is done to bring the to induce a nucleating particle that water vapor will attach itself to and eventually grow too heavy and fall as rain.
Right.
What the Russians came up with is the reverse. Is something that would keep the water vapor from attaching itself to each other, to keep them dispersed as microdroplets. And as long as they're dispersed as microdroplets, they won't form into droplets and they won't fall as rain.
Right, right. So this is what the Chinese probably are going to use during the Olympics.
They have stated there was there have been several press conferences. The most recent was right around the 1st of February. And at that conference, there is a bureau, there is a bureaucracy to run this army of weather managers. And the head of the bureaucracy went on at great length about how she planned to use this Russian technique and how it worked. And this was picked up on the world's news, and I got it off the BBC online.
Right, right. Oh, that's interesting. And did do you know what I'm thinking of when you're telling that story here is that we're probably going to see like a very dense chemtrail lines, crisscrossing the sky over some of the arenas, down in Beijing there during the Summer Olympics. I don't know. Do you think that that's one possibility that we're going to see? Like that's the technology they're using?
I don't think it will look like that. I don't think it will look like the so-called chemtrails. I believe what you're going to see is a haze. That in order to keep the droplets from forming, to keep them in suspension as micro droplets, the whole sky is going to be kind of gray.
Right. Well, it's going to be ugly, that's for sure. Oh my God. And also I want to just backtrack.
Ugly but dry.
Well, exactly. It's going to be so perfect. All the sportsmen can breathe in that stuff and so forth, Anyway, I want to backtrack just a little bit and talk about some of the publications, the scientific publications that you were talking about, and just also to put that in context, so to speak, that this is being done in the private sector. And what I'm getting at, of course, is that we also need to keep in mind that there probably are thousands of experiments going on within all the Black Ops programs, with all involving all the budgets that they do have now, and just to make that clear that potentially there's so much experimentation going on, while what we're seeing and can pick up on is just the small fragments, so to speak, of some of the private sector research, right?
Absolutely, and I make that point in the book. What have we heard of? What do we know about? We know about the HARP project because it accidentally got an article or two written up on it, and then a couple of books, and then a whole lot of people screaming. So the cat got out of that bag. But how many other bags are there? How many other projects are there?
Sure.
There are millions of research programs running around the world right now. How many of them have an effect on our lives in terms of the sort of thing we're talking about here?
Right.
We have no clue. We really have no clue what's going on at our local college, at industrial sites around the country, at military labs around the world. These things are we live in the most scientific